Hello YouTube, hello. We're back. And Speed Labs are back. This is the first Speed Lab of Tekken 8. Imagine that. But yeah, and it's Victor. At least now, this is after the patch, this post-patch, right? His throws are fixed. Like his generic throws, like these throws, they're okay. You can just break them normally. The 1+2 grab is also okay. It's not bugged or anything. It never was. It was just a generic, so in that regard we're good. But Victor is still a decent character. I can't say he's a very strong character or anything like that, but he's pretty good. I think he has very good tools. He has good frames. He has good punishment tools. He's not bad, from what I understand anyway. But as I also said, this is gonna be the first Speed Labs of Tekken 8 in general, and I might miss a lot of stuff because it's a new game, right? And not to mention this is a new character. But I'll try my best to explain some of the stuff that Victor usually does, and to just understand him a little bit better. So, yeah, let's start. So we're gonna be talking with Kazuya's perspective, obviously, playing Kaz against Victor. So the thing about Victor is, the main thing about him, is that he normally has very comfortable time being in like long range because of wall running too. I'm pretty sure everyone knows this move. If you went up against the Victor, you know this move, wall running too, right? And this move is where the very first moves you have to know how to deal with, and the properties are. I'll talk about that one later. So, this move right here. It is a +5 mid, right? That comes out pretty fast, 16 frames. And it's a counter hit launcher. And I think you can't even parry it. It's unparryable. Because I think it's a knife or something. So you have to be very careful when it comes to this move particularly in the neutral. And you should be expecting it when the Victor is making space. It's a little bit far away. The main way you can deal with this is a sidestep to the right. It is very linear to the right. As you can see, as long as you time the sidestep, you can make it whiff. Which is not easy because it's a wall running move, right? And the Victor player, if he's very good, can make it realign with you, but if you time it correctly, it's always linear. So that's very good to keep in mind, because a lot of Victor players just throw this out pretty predictably. So if you sidestep it to the right, and usually you want to sidestep Victor to the right, it's pretty good, because you get a free launcher, you know, it whiffs, then you launch it with electric or whatever your character has. So while running 2, that's how you usually deal with it, but on block, like the block situation is very important here as well, because you have to see that it's -5 for you, right? That's chip damage, and it's -5. So the Victor player can actually pressure you. So do something like a down forward to 1 to check you, or do some other checking tools. Like you can also back 1. Confirm the 2, right? Because this is also a frame trap. And it just works. So he has options to check you basically. But it's good to know what your options are for something like a down forward to 1, right? Let's imagine you block this, right? And the Victor player does a down forward to 1 here. You have to know your options. And as I said, sidestep right is usually the way you want to go. So if you do sidestep right, the down forward to 1 is gonna whiff. I mean, you can also sidestep to the left. You'll whiff no matter what. I think you can also backdash this, right? So knowing your options here are really good. Backdashing is one of the best things you can do because it's way safer than any sidesteps, because you're not risking getting launched or getting hit by something. So in that situation, backdashing is really good, unless they do this into another this, right? They can do it twice. So let's imagine you block this. They just do it again. I just messed up. There we go. They just do it again. If you are backdashing too much, you're just gonna get chip damage, right? That's why sometimes sidestepping to the right can be better. Like a little bit of a sidestep to the right, and then it will just whiff. So it's really good because you can just get a free launcher. And if you have a good back-turned combo, you can also sidewalk and get him back-turned. If your back-turned combo is very good, it's worth doing that. But sidestep blocking is usually the way to go. But this move in general is very strong, and you won't always be able to deal with it. Because Victor players may do this down back 4 after it. They may do a down 4 after it just to check you with lows. Or just, you know, jab you and keep on the pressure. So you have to be very, very careful when it comes to wall running 2. Especially you have to be careful to not get countered by it, because it deals a lot of damage on counter hit. Even though it's an instant tornado, it deals very good damage. So wall running 2 is the, like, maybe it's the number 2 move that people complain about Victor, because the number 1 move is this. Explosion. Explosion. This is the number 1 move that everyone complains about. Because this move is basically like a DP. It's basically an invincible, because Victor just disappears. Like, let's say he does something like this, right? Victor just disappears, and you can't hit him anymore. Mids just don't exist. So it's very hard to do anything here, unless you have a certain amount of frames, obviously. Like 12 or 13, right? So in this situation, what it means, to understand the frames better. So you are +4 here, and you're doing a 13 framer, which is 9, basically. It becomes 9, right? That means 9 frames is enough to actually check someone, for him to not just disappear. But if I do back 2, which is 14, that's not enough anymore. That means this invincibility, basically when he just evades everything, this invincibility starts on his 10th frame. That's what it means. But as long as he's not 2-, this will just instantly crush everything. Like in this case, he was -4, and he still crushed a lot of stuff. But if he's not 2-, like let's say he's -1 or 2, this will just crush everything that you do. So you have to be very careful. But the only big plus about this move is that it's steppable to both sides. Well, not steppable, but walkable to both sides. Right? And it's also launch punishable on block. It is -20. So if you block this, always launch it. The only exception is in heat. So let's talk about the heat version now, because the heat version is the strongest version that he has. So when he goes into heat, this move becomes much stronger, much stronger, because it has a few hits now and the increased damage. Usually it does 40, now it does 54. So the big thing about this is that when he goes into heat and does this, it suddenly is not launch punishable anymore. It's actually just +4, right? So if you do block this, don't make the mistake of maybe trying to launch it. It also deals a lot of chip damage. You guys see that chip damage? It's a lot. What it also does, it tracks better. So if you try to step this, it is steppable and walkable, obviously. But it's way harder to do so, because of the added hit. And that's why so many people are complaining about this move. It's very hard to dodge this. It's easier to dodge it to the right than to the left. And it is definitely possible still, but it's very hard. Especially if you just do a sidestep, right? Without the sidewalk. Then something like this will clip you. Right? It has a bit of clipping because of that second hit. So you have to be careful about the heat up back 1+2. Sometimes you can predict it, like hard predict it, and start sidewalking to the right. Because there are some setups that Victor players like to use. And most of them are like something like a high, I don't know, maybe a 1-2 into it, or down for the 1-2 into it. They might even do this into it. I've seen this happen. This right here. Because this is a high. It's only -4. You think it's your turn, right? You might press, I don't know, you might press something like this. And you just get crushed. Especially in heat. This is a high, by the way, you can duck it. It's a string, but the Victor players use that as a setup. So just be careful about different kind of setups. I don't know too many of them yet. Like this is one of them that I've seen. That for the 1-2 is something that I've seen as well. And some jab strings. I've seen some of them as well into explosions, but explosion is the kind of move, especially in heat, that they will just constantly find the situations to, what's it called, to just do a setup and just use this move, because it's low risk. It's basically low risk because it's -4 million range, good chip damage, decent tracking. What else do you need? And evades everything. This is a very good move in Heat. It's very strong. Even though it removes like almost half, I think it's more like 40%, it's not even half. It's still really, really good. So you have to be very careful about that. And about Victor, you also have to be very aware of his stances, this and this stance. You have to be very, very aware. I won't be covering literally everything because, as I said, the game is new and I don't know too much stuff for me to cover literally everything. But for these two stances, you have to be aware that when Victor transitions into this stance, which he can do either manually or after certain moves, I think he can do it after like while standing 1+2. There we go. Like after this. This is one of the common ones, right? Anyway, whatever transition he does, you have to be aware that this stance has a low, which is this. Where's the low, bro? There we go. There's the low. It's the 1. I forgot the input for it. So it has this low, which is a little bit on the slower side, but it's +4. So you have to remember that you may get fixed by this. It doesn't do too much, and it's also -13. Or if you're playing Kazuya, you can actually launch this, right? But it has decent tracking to the left. Very decent tracking. And that's why I keep saying, and I said it a little bit earlier, that if you want to sidestep Victor, usually sidewalk to the right is what works. But the tracking this has is pretty good. Don't get me wrong, it is pretty good. He has a mid mix-up with 3, which is a heat engager. It's really good. It's fast, way faster than the low, but this is a safe mid heat engager as a mix-up. It's very good. He has a tracking tool with 4. If you try to sidestep, that's what they might use. And they also have a string, which is a mid-mid, which is also a tracking tool. So this is one of the most important ones to know. So after Victor transitions into this stance, this 2-2 is the most common option Victor players go for. And it's because it's so strong, because it goes onto this stance, which is called EI stance. Or you can also finish it with a high, or finish it with a mid. So it's a very, very good move, and a lot of Victor players use it. So it's important to know how to deal with this. And the mind game is pretty simple outside of the EI stance. So let's talk about the mind game I'm talking about right now, and the EI stance a little bit later. So this move, the mind game here is very, very simple. This will catch you if you try to step because it's so fast, especially on hit, right? If you get hit by this, +8, they try 2-2, you won't be able to sidestep this or anything. But the mix-up here is if you block it, obviously if you block it, it's mid, you can't duck it. But the mix-up here is if they transition into the high, which is the 2-2-1, right? You can duck this. They can also transition to the mid, which is a pure mix-up to the high, so if you duck, you're gonna get hit. Or if you respect it, they're gonna transition 2-2 into EI stance and start mixing you up with this. So it's a 3-way mind game when it comes to this situation. And it's simple to understand because it just has the 3 options, so it's a 3-way mind game. So the way you beat this, pretty simple. You just duck this, right, and launch punish it. But be careful about the last hit because it's a countered launcher if you mash. So be careful. If you are not aware that this string is a thing, they will counter hit you with this a lot. And I mean a lot. The mix-up Victor has for that, if you keep ducking it, and you want some kind of reward because you're ducking it, is the 1+2, which I already showed you. So 2-2, 1+2. So if you duck this, let's say you duck after 2-2, you are gonna get hit. And deal decent damage. 31, knockdown, something is guaranteed there, I'm pretty sure. So be careful about this. The way you beat this is you are patient and you punish it. Because you can't really sidestep or do anything. So you have to be patient here. Block the mids, punish it. It's minus 13. But now, how does Victor beat you when you're just patient? Because the high doesn't really give you any reward, and the mid doesn't give any reward. Like, this is how the development team or just the balance team is thinking about. That's how I'm looking at it. That Victor needs something there to actually pressure someone more because they're respecting. That's why they added something like 2-2 EI stance. So if you respect this and just either duck or just be patient, if you respect the high or the mid, they will go into this stance and start mixing you up with this stance. So now let's automatically transition to this stance. And what is this stance? So this stance is one of his strongest stances, I think, because he has this mid, which is a very fast mid, right? Does decent damage. And most importantly, it's safe. Right? You can't punish this. It's safe mid from a stance. Really, really good. Amazing range. Also has a low mix up with this, which doesn't do too much, but it does decent damage. Right? It's 17 damage. But if you duck it, if you're playing Kaz, you can also launch this. TP works really, really well. Also has a power crush here, which is another mid. If you try to like challenge it, maybe you'll get hit by the power crush. And he also has a 1-1, which is his best option in my opinion. He also has 1+2, but you don't see this as much because the way you see this move is after this. Like that move, this is the same, but this is just a string extension. So we have to talk about the while standing 1 the most in my opinion, because that's the string that most Victor players use and abuse. So what they do is the while standing 1 string in general has like a few mix-ups. It's a mind game, which is what makes it strong, and that's why good Victor players use it as well. So there's while standing 1-2, right? So 1-2, 1+2. So this is just natural, or maybe 1-2-2. Yeah, 1-2-2. That's all natural. And if you do try to press after this, you will get hit by the second one. It also has a while standing 1-1, which is also a mid-mid and natural. If you try to mash after this, let's say you block this and you try to mash, right? You'll also get hit, just like the second one. He also has while standing 1+2, which is a high. If you try to mash here, you will also get hit. So basically what Victor is doing here... Yeah, I meant EI, not while standing. So the EI1 here is basically conditioning you to not press anything after this, right? That's why the extensions exist. But now this becomes what's it called? There we go. A pressure tool. And this is what a lot of Victor players do, right? This little teleport. So because you're afraid to press anything after this, they will literally do this into a teleport, right? This little teleport right here, and just continue pressure because you're respecting him so much. So sometimes he'll do this, sometimes he'll finish it. So you have to be aware that the Victor player is doing exactly that. Sometimes if you mash, it will actually work out. So if a Victor player does this, and you're mashing, right? This is the thing that mashing actually beats, right? That will beat it. If they're mashing, you will get a counter. If you have a hop kick is good here as well. So you do whatever here. So you have to understand this mind game. And also, it's very, very common for Victor players to do this particular thing. So when they are in EI stance, they do this into instantly this. This is very common. So be aware of this. So this into the high. Very common setup, and a lot of Victor players do this. Yeah, Danny, I'll post this on YouTube. This is all gonna be on YouTube. So this is very, very important to understand, because this is one of the best mind games Victor has. This right here, and that a lot of people use as well. And that's like the basis of the EI stance mind game with this. Now, obviously there's two, which is really good. Halbel, thanks for following, man. And of course the low, which is also really good. So you have to be very, very careful when it comes to stuff like that. Sidewalking left what tracks. Yeah, he can also track you with a few moves that he has. But usually sidewalking left is good if you have the frames to do it. Something like this high will track really well from what I know. And I think this down 2 also tracks really, really well. So you just have to look at your frames usually and sidewalk accordingly. Like for example, after this, if you start sidewalking, you will get hit by this one and this 2 both. So you'll most likely just stand still. So that means the EI stance will mix you up without you sidewalking, right? So it's all situational. It's very, very situational. Yeah, also down 1+2 EI. I almost forgot. So EI stance has a hell sweep as well. I almost forgot one of the most important lows he has. So this hell sweep is a 20 frame low, right? It's a double low. And it's launch punishable. Mine's 29. It's basically a hell sweep. But usually you don't want to duck this stance too much because he has such good mids. Like this and this, right? And this into this can be hit confirmed. A very good player will hit confirm this. It's also a wall splat. Or maybe even this. Right? So you are very, very careful about ducking here. But the Victor player still forces you to duck because this exists. And of course, if he wants to be a little bit safer, he might use the 4. So you have to be careful and be very aware about that stance. And about this stance as well, as I said, you have to be very aware because very, very good Victor players might manually transition into this stance. Or maybe some other Victor players as well. After a wall combo. They do a wall combo. I think this is the wall combo, right? I'm pretty sure this is a wall combo. They might do this. And then manually transition to mix you up. And then do this into manual transition again. And then mix you up again. So this kind of stuff can happen. These are like the 2 main stances Victor players use. Of course, his neutral tools aren't bad at all. But the stance mix-ups and the stance stuff, this is what's important. Or this. It's also a wall combo, right? And they might just manually go there and just mix you up. Usually you will see this. If they want a mid, you will see this if they want a low. And this mid, not only is the mix-up, right? Because it's a mid-mid. But it also extends pressure because it goes into this stance right here. So that's pretty good to understand. Of course, it's not going to be easy to implement the anti for this. Or just to always counter it. But it's just good to understand because you'll be seeing it more. You'll recognize it more is what I want to say. Okay. And about his neutral tools, one of his best neutral tools in my opinion is down 2. So down 2 is an amazing, amazing neutral tool. So this move is a heat engager, right? It's a mid heat engager and 0, 18 frames. It's very strong and it also does chip damage. The weakness this has is it's linear to both sides. But other than that, it's a very, very strong move. Right? It's a very, very good move. And the very good thing about Victor is that he also has a tracking move from his neutral, which is a 19 frame mid tracking move, which doesn't have a property like counter property or anything, but it is on the fast side, which is 19 frames, it's not that slow, and it's safe. So if you do steps or sidewalks too much, the Victor player will want to use something like this and just, you know, catch you, which is also +7, which is pretty good plus on hit. So other than that, he also has a very, very good wall standing too. This move is absolutely amazing. So the wall standing 2 is a 14 frame wall standing move, which is safe, it's -8, and it's a countered launcher. So this move is also very strong and a lot of Victor players may use this. Sometimes you will see down 1, wall standing 2. I've seen this before, for example, even though he's -6 because of the extension. You might be hesitating a bit. So you might do this as a flowchart, but the most common one is down back 4 on hit into this. This is the most common flowchart that you will see, right? And you can't do anything about this unless you are P2. Sometimes you can sidestep it if you have like range like this. You can sidewalk it. And also sidestep it. I think sidestep is a little bit more reliable. But if you're really close range, this will track you, like this. And you can't do anything about this in this situation unless you are P2. So if I switch positions here, this is way easier to step. Because that is steppable to the right and not to the left. And while you're P1, since you're forced crouch, you can't step that way. You can only step to the left. Unless you're playing on hitbox or something, I don't know, man. But yeah, it's a weak to sidestep right. And it tracks decently at sidestep left. Unless you have enough distance between you two, like this. A little bit more distance, there we go. Maybe a little bit more. As I said, it tracks well. There we go. It's a little bit inconsistent though when the sidestep left is what I want to say. So it's very, very strong, this mix-up. Because what the Victor players also do to mix you up with maybe this mid is this low high right here. So full crouch down 1+2. When this happens, I want to showcase this down back 4. They will do this if they think like you're not blocking low. Right? It's launch punishable, obviously it's low high. But they will do it if they think like you're just not ducking. So you have to be aware of this. Like this is the most common things you will see. That and also last thing 1+2. This is also a mix-up that you will see for the low high, which is a safe mid-mid. So if you're ducking this, safe mid-mid, 27 damage. And I also mentioned that this transitions into stance, right? So if you get hit, you're -8 and under stance pressure. So you have to be very careful about this. But the good thing is that if you block this and he goes into stance, you can actually punish him for it because he cannot block in that stance. You have to react to the stance, obviously. It's not easy, but it's possible. It's definitely possible. Mr. Hello. So yeah, that's very, very important to know. I talked about the explosion. And it's also very, very good to be aware that when he is in heat, you have to be aware of his low heat smash, obviously. And you will most likely abuse the fact that you're aware of it as well. You'll use a lot of mids like this. A lot of it. A lot of this, basically. Just to mix you up with this low. But that's very, very good to know. And also, this heat smash, when you block it, I'll showcase it right now, is -15. It is, you can electric it, but I wouldn't recommend it because of the block stun. So do something like a down forward 1-2. If you already have heat, you can launch him, but if you don't have heat, you will gain heat. It's a heat engager. So usually, Paul, thank you for follow, man. So usually be aware of this, be aware of the mids he can do. Usually it's a down 2 as well. You can just down 2 into, you know, heat dash. This might be a mix-up as well. So be very, very careful when it comes to that. Outside of that, I don't think you should be too scared of the character. Like my normal game plan against the character is to sometimes keep him out with electrics so he doesn't spam while running 2s. So he doesn't do that too often. And then he will most likely start doing down back 4s because that's a high crush. This is the only high crush he has. But this is very risky for him because if you duck this once, you will deal Lost Tank 2, just Lost Tank 2, and deal a lot of damage, right? So sometimes it's worth it because after this, the Victor player still risks a lot as well because they usually go for something like this, or this, which I already told you about. So the gameplay plan is kind of simple. Victor himself is a very simple character. He's not that complicated, but I think he's decently good. Decently good. But as I said, most likely right now, he is, what should I say it? He's like decently strong, but he's not to the level that every other very strong characters are. Like for example, King is very dumb right now. Not to mention they buffed him, which I still can't believe. And there's also June up there, Azucena's up there, Ling is up there. Ling is very strong. So Fang is up there, Dragunov's up there, but I don't think Victor's up there. Right? Maybe he was when his bugs were when his throws were bugged, but not anymore. But I also wanted to say that this is like early on speed labs, right? When I start understanding the characters, I'm just starting to understand the characters as well. So I'm pretty sure I might miss a lot of stuff. Not that I might, most likely I will miss a lot of stuff that I have to talk about more. But right now, this is a new character, it's a new game, it's a starting speed lab. This will help a lot to just, you know, check Victor, know his options, know the stances, and stuff like that. So yeah, big thank you for watching, YouTube. Big thank you. This is the first speed lab, so it's not gonna be the best, but it's there. It's better than nothing. So hopefully it helps. Till later.